Hey guys, welcome to the very first episode of Ranting with the Big Brain. And today, guys, I wanted to rant about the history of Nintendo, a 132-year-old franchise. So where to begin? Nintendo is a multi-billion-dollar franchise and the creator of many known consoles and games, like the Nintendo Switch or the Nintendo Serial System. Yes, it did exist, but it's not a video game system, And some other games like Mario or Zelda, or one of the more obscure ones like F-Zero or Smash Bros, among many more. Nintendo started off as a playing card company in 1889 in Japan, but it was not called Nintendo. It was called Yamauchi Nintendo. I'm probably going to butcher all these names in Japanese, so please forgive me. I'll try my best. Lol. Founded by Fujisaro Yamauchi, based in Kyoto, Japan. And the name in Japanese, according to the Wikipedia website, is leaving good luck to the heavens. So they were already asking for good luck to the company. The playing cards at the time were handmade and gained a lot of popularity in Japan. So they started mass producing the cards for the public. As the years go by, Mr. Fujisaro needed to retire, but since he didn't have a son, he passed it by Japanese tradition to his son-in-law. His name was Sakiro Kainada, and he partnered with the company and renamed it Yamauchi Nintendo & Co. And again, he did not have a son, so he passed the company to his son-in-law named Shigeru Yamauchi. But during the transfer of power, he abandoned his family and didn't take power, so it was all left to his son Hiroshi Yamauchi and continued to make the Hafunda cards, aka flower cards. In 1949, Hiramuchi's grandfather passed away and he had to take power of the company and leave college. And he renamed his distributing company from Markarafutu to Nintendo Karyuta. And in 1953, he started to produce his cards from plastic instead of cardboard. In 1959, Mr. Hiroshi Yamauchi struck a deal with Disney to put Disney characters on the cards. But this was a big change, however, because the cards we're printing was for gambling. Now they're kind of board game kind of playing, but the reason they changed was because they saw people could sell the books to teach people how to play, so there would just be more profit, like Pokemon today. Then in 1962, the company went public to the stock exchange for Japan in the second division. In 1963, the company yet again changed its names, but for the last time, from Nintendo Playing Card Co. to just simply Nintendo. They started experimenting not with video games just yet, but with their own taxi service, love hotel chain, and their own food service, mostly rice. All of these failed, but for one specific one, and that was toys. Not Toyotas, toys. Yay. So when the Olympics came to Japan, the whole economy boomed. I mean boomed, but not the playing card company. Boo. So they came to a point where no one wanted Disney cards no more. They were more focused on the freaking Olympics. So they just started making toys, and they struggled just to keep up. As technology was advancing, they came out with a new toy. But it was already old news because they had older tech and couldn't keep up. But they had a secret. In Christmas 1966, they released the Ultra Hand in Japan, which was a smashing hit among the Japanese, and it sold like crazy. You can still find it in a Mario track in Mario Kart 8 and Deluxe. Now we come to 1972, where they started experimenting with video games, finally. And the first thing they developed was a color TV game, and it had a very interesting title. It was a Japan exclusive, and was basically the Magnavox Odyssey. Then they created the Game & Watch, which was a little device with an e-ink display and had two buttons, and which was a simple game like juggling and cooking, etc. Around 1985, the video game market was crashing, and no one wanted video games. But since Nintendo kind of switched from cards to toys to video games, they had to think of something, or else they would die. So they released the Famicom, or the NES, which was a big success for one reason: ROM. They had ROM for certain games, so they could sell the thing in the toy aisle, not in the dying video game aisle. A couple years later, due to the success of the Game & Watch, they tried out something new, which was the Game Boy, the classic handheld. But they had one problem. They had to decide which gender they wanted to sell it in, due to the extreme sex differences in the 80s. So they opted for the boy, and that is why it is an icon amongst boys' stuff like soccer and football. 1 year later, they had released the smash hit SNES, or the Super Famicom, and it definitely deserves that title, as the graphics were now in 16-bit. No more usual 8-bit, which was standard among the NES. But now they had major competition. And it was Sega with their new Master System that was also 16-bit, and it had discs, so they had more third-party support on the console. And as a failed disc drive to go with the SNES, they had worked with Sony during an event, but a day after the event, they pulled out of the agreement, and they just completely made their own thing with another company. So Sony said, "Screw it! I'm making my own console," and the PlayStation was born. Oh! And in my opinion, that was the third worst mistake they had made in the industry. In 1996, they released the N64, now in 64-bit, which was one step ahead of the competition. Like the PS1 was in 32-bit, and the Big N was in 64. So it had one big problem. Even though that they were still in 64-bit and looked beautiful, the problem was they stuck with cartridges to avoid piracy. And that was their second biggest mistake, because the Xbox had disc and the PS2 had disc, so they were left behind in the competition and with third-party support. But in the handheld district, they were dominating with their Game Boy, and it had to revamp it. So they created the Game Boy Color and Light. The Light was a Japan exclusive, so we're not going to really talk about it. So here, just take this. It had no color, but it had a backlight screen. So they managed to fix one of the problem of the Game Boy, but not the other. So they're kind of interchanged. But the Game Boy Color released everywhere, and it didn't fix one of the problems though. It had color, but it just didn't have a Mario Kart on it. Come on, seriously, where's my Mario Kart for the Game Boy? Just kidding. But still, it had no backlight, and so they sold the Worm Light. Then in 2001, they released the GameCube, but it had a similar problem with the N64. No discs? I mean, they did, but at the same time, they didn't. So I had these mini discs, but why, you ask? You very intelligent, big brain listener. To avoid piracy. I'm done. I'm seriously done. Like, that's inexcusable. No. Why? To avoid piracy again? No. I say not, my good listener. I say not. I want to ask you something, bro. They had the GameCube. It had an excellent controller. Great game designs, like Melee and Sunshine. But no discs? Really? Then the Game Boy Advance it's an excellent handheld, I hear. So there's no backlit screen. Excuse me. Just why? Just tell me why. But then the Game Boy SP came along and said, it's pretty cool. Just to interject here, I want to be talking about the DS Fam, because it will get its own pod later, so back to the pod. We get it. Then we finally get the Wii, and it's with its own disc. Hell yeah! But you guys already know what the Wii is. It was an amazing system besides the remote. It's fine, I guess, but the whole motion gimmick, it was okay at best, but the ultimate gamer console is the Wii U. I honk and love it. Besides commercials, but it's like whatevs. I was stunned by the fact that it only sold 13 million copies of the system. And I'm just like, why? And then I look up, it's because of the marketing of the kids. So, but the problem is that no one knows that the gamepad just melts into your hand. And it's just so good. And the big meaty shoulder runs like, Due to the bad sales of the Wii U, it kind of killed their audience, and in 2016, it looks like the end of the franchise. But nope! Gotti! It switched up the competition! Ha! Joke, pun definitely intended. The Switch is just beautiful. The idea of taking it everywhere and playing it everywhere is just so ingenious to start with. And until today, it has a smaller and cheaper version of the Lite. So maybe in the future, we'll get the Switch Pro. Thank you all for making it to the end. And make sure to check out my YouTube channel called The Dangy Pets with a Z. And to see me and my dumb skits with my bourbon doggo. So, I need to rant away. Thanks. Why are my podcasts so bad? Ah!